Carallel's Caregiver Conversation series. Matt Perrin, back with you, Director of Caregiver Engagement at Carallel. I'm joined by my friend Sheila Schultz. Hey, Sheila.
Hey Matt, how are you today?
I'm well, I'm well. Nice to see you as always. And excited to talk about today about when family makes caregiving more difficult. So, hopefully not all caregivers experience this. I think many do, but hopefully not all. And it's a if you know type of thing. So uh, I'm happy to dive into it. A little bit of housekeeping, Sheila, as usual. If you're joining one of these sessions for the first time, we are Carallel. We're a caregiver support company. We work every day to make caregiving easier for people who are taking care of a family member, friend, neighbor, what have you. And we do that with our care advocate support line that's staffed by our team of care advocates who are helping with anything under the sun that's on the plate of a caregiver. And we complement that one-on-one personalized help over the phone, email, or chat with our digital experience, the Carallel app, which in my way of thinking is like having Sheila or one of our care advocates in your pocket. It's just an easy way to schedule a call, make a call to a care advocate. There's tons of great content in there for you to read, watch, listen to, that'll help you feel seen, help you learn stuff, help you get stuff done. It's a really great companion to our support line. So, and we make our service available throughout the country through health systems, health insurance companies, employers, etc. So, if you're not sure whether you have access to the full service, ask your health plan, your employer, your health system, etc. So, in a nutshell, that's what we do here at Carallel every day. And in these sessions in particular, these are really meant to be conversations. So no slides. We'd love to have you be part of the conversation. So please do use the chat console in the bottom of your Zoom window here to ask questions, share perspectives, etc. So I think that's the housekeeping, Sheila. And that might have been a record for time.
That
What do
was
you think?
good.
Okay. All right. So it's too cold here in New Hampshire to have my dog outside, so she's on the couch. Apologies in advance if we get any background noise from little Miss Maggie over here to my right. But Sheila, let's start by just well, in my notes I said sort of airing some grievances. What 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 makes at points at times what makes working what makes family or let me say this again. How does family make caregiving more difficult
Yeah,
at certain points? Why don't you start us off?
sure. Well, I think this happens across everyone that I talk to. In some respect, one way or another, someone runs into some tension or issues with a family member or someone who's you're relying on to help you. And I think it comes down to us all being different. We have different lives, different ideas. We have a different history with the person we're caring for. We have different emotional levels, and we also have different skills. So we have to
Mhm.
kind of put that all in perspective as we go forward and try to come up with ways to make this as easy on us and easy for the one that you're caring for to provide sort of a cohesive circle of care.
I like it. I like it. So there's there are a couple maybe not a few, but a couple elephants in the room when I think about this topic. Um, so maybe the mama elephant is uh, unequal share of the workload,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You know, there's that, which I
yeah.
think a lot of people experience. Um, I didn't because I was an only child, but I witnessed my wife experiencing that with her two siblings. So that's one. And then you mentioned history, um, and this is going to be sort of one certainly a through line through the conversation today. But the history and um, the emotion that is maybe wrapped uh, up into the history that you have with either the person you're caring for, or other family members who are involved or not involved in the care, right? It sort of all has a way of stacking up to
Mhm.
um, make it a loaded sort of a loaded thing that is just really, frankly, hard at some points, and that's where
Yeah.
the whole making it more difficult, that we sort of intentionally put in the title, that's where that comes from, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And I think just as we go forward in the next little bit of time that we have together here, I want to, point out that this is always going to be sort of an invitation to look at things in slightly different way. It's going to be hard if you have this history and you have this idea of what your sister's doing and she always has done this and this is the way she's always been, and try to, come back to the present moment. And the other thing that I really want to mention on that I have seen firsthand is that there's always a root cause behind why someone is saying they won't do something or they're not able to help. You might think on the surface they're just saying, I don't have the time. And you're thinking, well, that's a terrible excuse. But maybe it means when it gets back to the history, maybe they are really sad about their loved, if it's your parent, maybe they're really sad about it and it makes them so uncomfortable to be with them. So that's when you can learn about what's going on underneath their answer or their resistance and maybe find some other ways that they can help that maybe would reduce that uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah, great point, and I'm glad you mentioned it because, and it's related to something else that another caveat that I was gonna put on this, which is none of so we're gonna, we're kind of airing our grievances and talking about like the reality of what all the ways that our family unit can make it more of a challenge in some cases. um, but now we're going to step into what we can do about it,
Mhm.
and then I I, I want to drill down even a little bit further and talk specifically about things we can do to diffuse disagreements or work through disagreements. But the point you just made around thinking differently or trying to is directly related to my caveat, which was none of this is rocket science. And maybe a lot of it might not be even things that you don't already know, right? But like we talk about so often in this conversation series, when you're in the midst of a caregiving experience, it's it's really hard to see the forest through the trees, as my
Mm.
grandmother used to say, and you're just so deep in the weeds, it's hard to see things um, clearly, right? And even harder when there's the emotional sort of historical, all these factors, right, that family can drive into this. So let's talk about things we can do on that note. And you were kind of alluding to this, Sheila, but um, the first that we talk a lot about here at Carallel is defining roles, right?
Mhm.
And again, it's easy for us to sit here in this conversation and say, well, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Caregiver, just define roles with your family and it'll all be better, right? That's not what we're
Right.
getting at.
No.
But this is a little thing, because this a lot of what's woven through all of the things we're talking about here is communication, right? And there's all different aspects, and defining roles um, can be a really helpful place to start if you're just starting out in a caregiving experience, or maybe get unstuck, right? If you feel like you're
Mhm.
against a wall, and you've been in it for a while, and you're butting heads or just at loggerheads with family. So defining roles, Sheila, what do we mean when we talk about that?
Well, I always think of two different ways of thinking about it. There are things that people like to do and things that people are good at doing. So if you can even pick one of those and find a task that you're looking to get done and say, who in my family is either really good at this or enjoys doing this? And so that's the task that you would ask them to help you with. And even beyond that, I would say go one step further in an effort to get some kind of response back is to give them options. So it's, I know you're really good at this, and I need help on Tuesdays with this version of it and Thursdays with this version of it. which one is better for you? So it
Mhm.
it kind of gives them some control. It acknowledges that they're, that you found something that they either are enjoying or are good at, and then they have some kind of control over what works for their schedules.
I love that really for a couple different reasons. One is and I've told stories before about conversations I've had with my uncle when I was caring for my mom, but there are times when family, and this extends to friends too, um, family or friends, they want to help, but they don't know how,
Right.
right? Um, and now it's an entirely separate conversation. It's not our job as a primary caregiver to like make it easy for them to help, right? Like there's that, but 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 it kind of is at in some
Helps
points,
you.
right? Yeah,
That,
exactly. Um, so and I love that like the specificity you were introducing there and just that example, which is total hypothetical, but hey, I need this on Thursday, even better, Thursday at 4 o'clock or from four to
right.
seven or whatever it
Right.
is, right? So the more specific you can be, the better. Um, Again, because it makes it easy for you to get, hopefully, to a yes. But either way, um, an answer quicker, right?
Right. Right.
Um, but the other thing is, and something we didn't touch on when we were airing our grievances is sometimes, another reason uh, people may not be able to help is they're not there. They're
Yeah.
not, they live far away, maybe, it could be an
Yeah.
hour's drive, it could be a flight, like, so that's another sort of contextual factor here that I think is important. So when you're saying that example about like think about what people are good at and things they like to do, but also like that's another dimension of the fit, right? Like maybe you have a sibling who lives on the other side of the country. Um, can they take some of the admin work that can be done on the internet off of your
Yep.
plate?
Yep.
That sort of thing, right? So there's that element for defining roles. But just,
Yeah.
I mean, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think you did it really well because I think you could break it into categories and say, okay, there's things that have to be having to do with transportation. There are things that have to do with medical appointments. There are things that have to do with bills or things that you can do online. And once you have those categories, then you could say, okay, what's my pool of resources locally? Or what can we do from a distance? And then that's how you start placing people with roles and skills or things that they like to do.
Love it. Okay. I just had another thought, but
Oh, shoot,
it,
I
it,
interrupted you. Sorry.
no, it came as quick as or it went as quick as it came. Um, oh, I remember. But so and this is sort of segueing into the next thing we wanted to talk about. Um, but the exercise of defining these roles, it gives you or has the potential to give you a sort of framing or a structure for like opening dialogue
Yeah,
which is the next thing, and it's
yeah,
you might hear us say, well, the next thing on our list is talk about it, right, with the family that is you feel like is making it difficult, they're not helping. Well, like, no kidding, duh, talk about it. Well, that's really hard sometimes when you're in
it
the midst of a
is.
caregiving experience, and even if you don't have like a headwind of a history with a sibling or a family member. So but this exercise of defining roles can help open that dialogue or give you sort of a structure, or guardrails to have um, back and forth with family members around the care of your loved one. So, and that in and of itself can be beneficial. Um, because I know with my wife's situation with her sister and her brother, like there was just a silence at certain points, and that
Yeah,
silence just became louder and louder and louder, and
yeah,
then feelings are harbored, and it's just stewing, right, which isn't good for anyone, and certainly not productive for anyone.
right.
So defining roles can help sort of open that dialogue. um, but let's talk about talking about it though, Sheila,
Okay,
specifically, because there's an art to it. Like um, what are some just off the top of your head sort of things to keep in mind or ideas or tips for people to be thinking about when it comes to having maybe any conversation, but particularly tough conversations. Like, hey, I'm drowning here. I need help. Like,
Right.
what should people keep in mind or think
Well,
about? Like,
I think the first thing when you think about communicating with the family is look at the way that you typically communicate. Now, some people will say, well, I never talk to my family, or we only talk at holidays or whatever. This is where you get creative and you say, how can I get the biggest group together in a way that everyone is most likely to contribute in this conversation? And it could be at a family meal if you all live in the same area, or even at a holiday event. But it could be a group text, or it could be some other resource that you're using that allows you all to get online and communicate with one another. But I think that if you're the primary caregiver and you're looking for help, you have a choice. You could do it all yourself and never talk to anybody about it and ask for them and just sort of wonder why they're not volunteering. Or you can start putting out these feelers and these seeds in whatever way feels natural. And it's an experiment. Some people aren't going to respond, and you have to be okay. Well, at least I know now. So where can I go next? And I think
mhm.
it's a matter of testing the waters, trying it again and again, engaging with the people who will connect with you, and then finding the right fit for what they can do for you.
I love it. I love it. So couple other ideas to throw out there, and these are sort of in the more tactical category. Um, Admittedly, maybe colored by some of my own personal
That's
tendencies, but
always.
I'm not. I'm more of a bull in a china shop sort of
Yeah.
like caregiver where or communicator where uh, it can be it's particularly in a caregiving situation it can be hard to kind of always keep cool.
Yeah.
Um, so to that end, a couple of thoughts. Whether it's in text and especially like in on the phone or in person, it can be really helpful to set intentions. So if you're having a conversation, whether it's a group conversation, a one-on-one conversation, um, but even before setting intentions, like if if you feel if it's loaded, if it's a loaded sort of topic, like you know, trying something simple like a few cleansing breaths before you start to sort of center
Yeah.
yourself, ground yourself, can be really, really helpful. Um, and I say that as someone who isn't, I'm not the biggest mindfulness person out there, right? But
Yeah.
that really helped me. But setting intentions at the outset of whatever conversation you're having can also be very, very helpful and just set the tone. And in situations where um, maybe there is a history that is difficult for all parties involved in a conversation, uh, beyond setting those expectations, or when you're setting those expectations, stick to the facts
Mhm.
as much as possible. So maybe you've
Mhm.
observed something with, the person that's being cared for that is concerning you or is giving you pause or whatever it might be, but sticking to the facts as much as you can, when setting those expectations and then throughout the entire discussion. Now, this is very, very, very much easier said than done. I fully recognize, but being intentional about it from the start, um, every little bit helps when it comes to getting you in a position to have an effective, productive conversation with family when things maybe aren't um, the best, right?
Yeah.
So those are a few other tactical items that I would offer.
I really love that, Matt. And I think that when you're setting your own intention, there's nothing wrong with sharing that at the beginning of the conversation and say, look, here's what I'd really like to get out of this conversation. If we could walk away and I have A, B, and C, and we all feel like we agree with it, that would be awesome. And so you're kind of setting up those guardrails and the rules of the conversation, and we're going to stick to the facts and try not to get, into past issues or think concerns. Let's just get to these three things. Yeah, that's really wonderful. Intention.
Yeah, absolutely. I should have made that clear. Like I internally, but absolutely externally if you
Yeah.
can, if you feel comfortable. Um, because it also and roles, it has a way of just sort of putting everybody on equal footing
Yeah.
in the conversation. But and somewhat related, what about expectations, right? Sometimes I feel like having or the need to adjust expectations can help families um, sort of either get on the same page or get closer to being on the same page.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts there?
Well, it's human nature. You've seen this no matter in what aspect of life you're in. If you have a group of people, there are going to be some people who are going to end up doing more in that community or that group than others. It's just the way it's always going to be. So if you walk into this situation and think that three family members are going to get 33% of the things done each, it's just not going to happen. So that's, setting the expectation. And like I said, you have to be a little bit flexible and go, look, I could do all of this myself, or I could reach out and try to get in the best way that I can some help. And even if they're doing one thing, it's one thing less than you have to do. So yeah, keeping that barometer on and not being of the mindset that we're all going to be equal in this, and
Hmm.
you'll feel a lot better and you'll get some things done.
Yeah, I love that. And that's expectations on sort of the interaction with family, which absolutely that's what we're talking about here. But there's another side of that coin,
Mm.
which is so these four pillars, I guess you could call them, that we're talking about are all they're all important in their own right, but they're all related.
Mm-hmm.
So, you like just setting your intentions for a conversation, staying fact-based, like those sort of uh, play into um, having the right expectations or adjusting expectations, and vice versa. So, and the expectations part can apply um, to the situation with the person being cared for,
Yeah.
and sometimes friction stems from, maybe a sibling who isn't there every day, who has an entirely different set of or understanding of what the reality is
Yeah.
with the person being
Happens
cared
a
for,
lot.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So the expectations piece is really, really important. Um, and it sort of frames everything else in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
So you've alluded to like having meetings or group discussions, like having getting aligned on the expectations as a family unit of where the person being cared for currently is,
Yeah.
um, could be, the topic on its own of a meeting, right? Of a
Hmm.
conversation that could be really productive. And then, so I just wanted to mention that. The last thing is respect. Again, tied to everything else we're talking to. Can be really, really hard, but this is something that goes, to me, could be an intention, right? Like I'd
Hmm.
like to I'm concerned about X. This is why I'm concerned, and I'd like to talk about it while respecting,
Right.
I'm making a point to do my best to respect your point of view, sibling,
Hmm.
parent, grandparent, whoever it is, right? But
Yeah.
the respect factor, which again, so much easier to talk about here in this setting than when it's
Yeah.
when in real life,
Right.
when
When you're
there's a
exhausted
disagreement.
and
Yeah.
stressed out and overwhelmed, and yeah. I think something that comes up often is the person who has been a primary caregiver who is now reaching out for help. Sometimes it's really easy to try to manage how your family member is going to do their job. And one thing that I would really recommend is staying in your lane. And it's going to help you. It's also going to give them the opportunity to do the job in the best ability that they can, and try not to sort of respect their ability to get the job done in the way that they need to do it. Because otherwise you're going to end up just doing it all again yourself anyway, if you're doing your own thing and managing theirs. So stay in your lane and let other people stay in theirs. And I think it makes life a lot easier when talking about respect.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, stay in your lane. It's a phrase that anybody can relate to. So I love that. So time flies when we're having fun, as always here.
Oh my
So
goodness.
can you give me a few things, Sheila? If there is an acute, specific disagreement, what are three things you might tell a caregiver that you're working with to think about in terms of like that could help them sort of manage through whatever disagreement they're having?
Well, one thing that is something you brought up, and that is take a minute to kind of ground yourself, take a deep breath so that you're not in that high stress frame of mind. And you can think clearly to go on to the next thing that you're going to talk about or do. Also, look beyond their answer into the root cause, what possibly might be the root cause of them resisting, and understand that there might be some a little bit emotions or tender things beyond them
Mhm.
just saying no. And
Mhm.
then, that third thing, I guess, is to stay in your own lane. Once it's
Mhm.
set in place, stick to what you're doing. Thank them for, joining in.
Mhm.
And, it's an experiment. It's going to be adjusting and shifting and moving, and let that be okay.
Yeah, I love that. And something I would just add something that I hear you say often, which is um, this notion of like if you feel stuck, if you feel that you're at like this just a stalemate in a disagreement, um, for, searching for any sort of little slice of common ground, like however
Yes.
small it is, right? And I'm here I am talking saying something you talk about all the time, but it's like find that one little slice of common ground,
Mm,
um, and just try and build on it incrementally.
yep.
Um, because underlying point being that obviously there's all different types of disagreements, but in some of the bigger, more substantive ones, um, you know, they're not going to be solved in one conversation. The
Right.
odds are. Um, but every time you're interacting, every time you're talking about it is an opportunity to sort of make a little progress.
You
Um,
bet.
I guess, so, um, wow. 30, who knew 29 minutes could go so quick? Um, I just so our next session is March 27th. So I just put the link to our schedule page. All the replays are there too. Um, in the chat here, we're talking about alternatives to the emergency room. Really important topic. Um, so looking forward to that one, Sheila, on the 27th
Mhm.
of March. Any
Yep.
final thoughts for people on family?
Yeah, I'd say go easy on yourself. This is tough. Everyone goes through this. Do your best, and just keep chipping away at things. Any one thing that you can get done, and by someone else and not yourself is going to be beneficial to you and to the one you're caring for, because then you have a little bit more energy to do some other things.
I love it. Yeah, so the last two things I would say are pretty specific, but one is facts. Stick to the facts as much as you can. I had someone that I grew to know and really trust that was a resource for me when I was in the midst of my caregiving experience, and they would just constantly remind me of sticking to the facts,
Mhm.
sticking to the facts, and
Good
it
advice.
really does help. It sort of objectifies what is absolutely at times very, very difficult, but pretty much always a very emotional and physically taxing experience of caring for someone else. So sticking to the facts can really, really help as you're communicating. And um, specificity is something you mentioned, Sheila.
Hmm.
Um, if we talk about asking for help, accepting help a lot in these sessions because it's woven through basically every aspect of a caregiving experience. But again, specificity is your friend in these
Yeah.
cases. So when you're communicating and talking about those facts, be as specific as you can. Um, because whether you're asking for help or trying to make a point or trying to help somebody understand what you're seeing as someone who's there day to day, like those details matter.
Yeah.
So just try and remind yourself to, the more specific that you can be, the better.
I
Specific
think,
about the facts, right?
yeah, and I think the thing that most caregivers don't realize is that if you ask for help and you say, I need an hour, someone says, God, that's all you need is an hour? Well, an hour to a caregiver is like, oh my God, an hour of freedom? Give me a
Right.
break. That's so helpful. So people who are asking, saying, I can do something for you, don't realize how little they have to do in order to alleviate your burden. So,
I love it. All right, Sheila, thank you as always. Thanks everybody for being here. The replay will be sent to your inbox and hope to see you on the 27th of March. All right, bye everybody.
bye.